guys? Welcome to another episode of Muay Thai Saved Me. My name is Crew Neil, and if it's your first time tuning in, we bring on guests that Muay Thai has impacted them in some way, and I have a special guest today. He's actually a good friend of mine, Charles Basset. Charles, I can't even keep track of your titles that you got. Like, how many titles are you holding right now?
I have 4 world titles, but 11 titles altogether.
Wow.
Yeah, a couple.
Wow.
Yeah.
Charles, welcome to the show. Thank you for hanging out with me.
Always a pleasure.
And I just thought it would be super cool. Not only are we friends, but I just thought you have such a cool story. But I would love for you to share, like, to the audience, like, what got you into Muay Thai?
I couldn't play sports. I was homeschooled. I was raised off grid, no power, electricity. And my mom was a teacher, so she'd be going to different towns. She was a music teacher.
Okay.
And, you kind of like start to read books, or sometimes I get to see a film. I saw like Kung Fu movies and all that. So I kind of wanted to get into that. And I'd go to the library and read books and rent out all these books and whatnot. And this town called Trail, BC had a Thai boxing gym. And it was a 3.5 hour drive from where we lived. But my mom was teaching there 3 to 4 days a week, and we'd drive there and drive back, Wow. And they got me in there when I was 10 years old. I thought it was 12, but I actually did the math. I was like, oh, I was off. I was 10 years old, and I went in there.
Wow.
And my coach his name was Glenn Klesniko, and it was super old school. It was like very spoiled in some ways, because it was for that area. It was like 10,000 people in that town. That was like the big town around there.
Wow.
And had humongous, like 20 bags in there, like a big gym, but it was super old school back in it was like 2000 or something like that, or 2000 something. But it was a rough gym. Like it was a good thing, but it was like, I started training there when I was like at that age. Then I started to get around. I was just like, I don't know if I want to fight. And then I was like, yeah, secretly I want to fight. And because I remember seeing the fighters come with their track suits on, I was like, oh, those guys are cool, man. Those guys got swag, that's pretty badass. And I started to spar a little bit in like the kids' classes, and they're like, oh, you want to move up to like train the fighters? I was like, yeah, sure. And man, I got whooped.
How old were you then when they asked you?
Well, I was 14.
14, okay.
Yeah, so, I looked good on pads, but then it did not translate into sparring, I did everything wrong. I was like, I was checking kicks this way. I couldn't walk. They did all this like, whoop on my legs. And it was just, I got my butt kicked for a while,
Yeah. Now, I want to tap into that mindset, though, buddy, because, 14 years old, you're getting beat up, but you keep coming back.
Yeah.
Why did you keep coming back?
I remember the first time, when I was 14, I got my nose broken by this one guy.
Oh, shoot.
And, blood was everywhere. Whole face. I remember they stopped, like, whoa, stop. And my whole face was just covered,
Yeah.
And I was leaking all over the ring, and my coach was like, get out of the ring, you're bleeding on my ring, So I got out of there, and I was like, man.
That's super old school.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm not going to let anybody. And you couldn't really see it, but I was like on the verge of crying, I'm like, I'm going to hold my stuff together, and I'm going to, do what I got to do when I get outside, And they're all just like, this kid ain't never come back. And I came back, and I just continued to get my ass whooped,
Wow, okay.
And then when I hit to be 15, I started to be able to hold my own. And I got to have like my first fight, so they're like, oh, you ready to do it? And I was like, yeah, you bet. I can't wait. I was like, I'm just going to have one. And like, this is not for me, but I'm going to have one fight.
Okay.
And trained for it and went in there. It was in a nightclub, another province. For us, like where we were, we'd have to drive 7 hours to fight.
Wow.
So people down here, like the super privileged, like, oh yeah, I'm going to go down to San Diego. It's so tough, We'd have to drive 7 hours in like snowstorms,
Jeez.
And there was never fights in the summertime, but the fights would always start around like October, and then you'd be able to fight until like first week December, winter break, and then February, that'd be like usually the first fights, and you'd be fighting until June, But yeah, it was pretty rank, First fight was in a nightclub, and it was pretty cool,
Now, I'm just assuming because there weren't many shows, like I'm sure it was bombarded with fighters that were trying to get on the show. Like, how many bouts would you see? Like, would you remember?
It wasn't as crazy as like sometimes down here we'll see like 20 some fights.
Yeah.
It was like a big fight card, be like 16 fights. That was huge,
Oh, okay.
But they kept it really professional that way, and they ran it really good. Like, the weigh-ins happened the day before. Usually, sometimes the weigh-ins would be the same day of, which would suck, But it would always be like, get on the scale. Like, the weigh-ins were fast. They took care of us that way. And it was the thing about that back then, which is like different from down here, is they're like, we promote the show. You come, you're a fighter, you fight. You know, it's like a lot of times now it's like, how many tickets can you sell? This and that. If you put on a good show and you come down and you scrap, you know, they're all about having you on. You know, because you're not going to bring anybody from 7 hours away. And like, that was the promoters thing. You know, they would bring the people. That was the nice thing. You just got to focus on fighting. You know, and there'd be some big good crowds. Like, you know, PFA, Cody Jerome, who's a good friend of mine. I've cornered him, and he just won championship. His coach, Brad Wall, Lee Mean's son was in the UFC as well. They were the promoters for my first show, and I fought for them quite a few times, and they're good friends of mine as well. And they always would match it up. They matched it up very fair, you know. Like sometimes you'd fight, and you know, I only fought one kid my age, and everybody else in their 30s and their 20s, you know. And it was rank. And then we had our own show once a year in April in our town. It was crazy. Like they'd sell it was a basketball arena. And they'd sell it out, be like 1,000 people in there. And then eventually, like after I left there, they'd get like up to like a couple thousand, like 3,500 people in like a bigger hockey arena, you know? So like, you know, my coach really was good about promoting, but he just like got burnt out from that and didn't want to do it as much anymore. But we had hard fights, man. And like I had one fight where it was with like headgear and shin guards. Everything else was bare shin, you know what I mean? And you're allowed to like, up in Canada, after 3 fights, you're allowed to knee to the face, you know? So it was different, you know?
That's cool.
No, it was really fun, you know? Like,
it allows you to really like be in the art.
Oh yeah, and I love that. You know, like I remember I have a fighter. I had him fight some kid down here, and they were a year apart. And my kid was 16, or he was 17, about to turn 18 or something like that. And the other kid was 16, about to turn 17. And they were like, it was literally a year apart. And he just threw this fit. He's like, "Oh, your kid's too old." And I was like, they're a year apart. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I mean, like, dude, I thought guys in my 30s, man, like they're a year apart. It's the same thing, you know, but it was a lot more Western back then, you know? Now,
how did it feel though? Because like I was in that same boat too at 14. By the time I was 15, I had to fight 23-year-olds and up, right? How did you feel? Like your first adult, were you nervous? Like
my first fight, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. My team went out there, and he was like a tree planter, and he came back in there, and he won by decision, by unanimous. And he came back, and he was like this barfing his guts out in the thing. And my coach was like, "You see what he's doing right now? That's what I want from you." He says, "You come back in here if you're feeling fresh. I'm gonna be pissed." He's like, "I want you to don't leave anything out there." He's like, "We're not hometown, you know what I mean? Take it to this guy, you know." And after that, it was just like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like I was like, okay, I better show up, you know? Because my coach was like, he was hardcore. If you were not like doing the deal in the ring, he'd be like, "Wake up!" Like he would smack you. You know what I mean, in a good way, not in a bad way, man. But he was hardcore, you know. And he like, you know, Rob Common was his like his idol. You know what I mean? So he trains a very Dutch way, like hard low kicks, you know, and very like aggressive style. I was the different fighter from that gym because I was aggressive, but I was very technical, you know what I mean? And I always felt like back then when I was there, because everybody's like, "Oh, if you fight a Pride Gym guy," you know what I mean? Like,
it's gonna be a scrap.
It's gonna be a scrap, you know. And I was in those hard fights because, like, you know, you fight these adults and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go through this 15 or 16-year-old," and I knocked a lot of those guys out, but I was very technical about it. I would like, it would take a lot for me to get hit and be in the scrap because I was very technical, you know. But I was like, God, I should just put my hands down so I can get in a war, you know what I mean? Because I was very smart that way, you know. Which is good. But back then I was like, man, I'm not doing it properly, you know. But
you were.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
You were building longevity without even realizing.
Exactly, you know.
So, buddy, when did you move to like the U.S.? When did you come to California?
Well, I'm a dual citizen. Both my parents are American.
Oh, okay.
And I was raised on top of a mountain, no electricity, like I said, by Yankees. So like I was born with a dual citizenship. So I'm very blessed, very lucky.
Nice.
So I moved down in 2008, and I came down here for work. I was starting colts horses for a cutting horse trainer. And got that job done. And then after that, I was like, I want a cowboy in Northern California. So I got a job on like a 35 days Lincoln Ranch up there, and start working up there. And I was there for like, you know, a good year and a half. And then after that, I was like, man, I was just always itching out. And it was so funny. I was like, man, I'm like 24. Do you think I'm too old for this? And I was just like, I don't know if I should do it. So I came down here and I went to pursue acting. And got into that. And I found a gym and I was just kind of training at. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do a fight. So I called up because the guy that was helping me at that time, he didn't really have any connections in the Thai boxing arena. And I was like, all right, well, you know, I called this promoter, it was IFS, you know, and I told him my situation, I told him my fights, and they said, okay, we'll get you a fight. So I was really an independent fighter, you know. So they matched me up with a guy from a local gym down in this area, and I showed up, And my coach, he was there for that one, but he like, you know, he hadn't cornered in a long time and didn't know how to wrap hands.
Oh no.
You know, I know. So I never had that situation. That was the first time I wasn't with Pride Gym, you know, and I was like, oh, okay. You know, I was like, I saw this Alan Flores, this one guy, and I saw him fight in Canada. I was like, hey man, can you tape my hands? And he's like, yeah. And they're all just thinking, dude, this kid's going to get smoked. Everyone was just probably thinking that, you know, and they're like, dude, this like kid doesn't
Poor
like,
kid.
Yeah. They're like, oh man, you know, like pretty much independent gym, you know? And went in there, and I hadn't fought in a long time, and I was just like, oh, this is my last fight, so you know, I haven't fought in a long time, so I went in there and like I necked a whole bunch of guys in Canada. Like I knocked a lot of guys up a head kick, you know, like grown men. I was on like I was on a good win streak, but I ended up necking that guy, and they like put a neck, like took him on a stretcher.
What round was that?
For round one, yeah, in a round one, you know. But it was a good fight, and then I just continued from there and had a good amount of fights down here.
Yeah,
it was good. But it was like when I look at like when I came back and I was doing the pro-am thing down here, it was crazy what I got accomplished, because I had sometimes like fights where I would go to, and I had people I'd be coaching with, and I had sometimes where coaches didn't show up to corner me, you know?
Yeah.
Had to have friends corner me, you know? Yeah. I had like one time a world title fight where I didn't have a coach.
Oh my god.
You know what I mean? Like a professional one, you know, where I didn't have a coach. Like I was paying for some privates, and then I had a friend that was in town that was going to corner me. You know what I mean? It was crazy, you know?
A cool story that a lot of people probably don't know about us is like, I think I'm gonna share the story. I'm gonna share how we met.
You bet.
But it was funny. I don't remember the year. I think it was like 2015, 2016 maybe.
Yep.
Would you say?
I'd
that
say,
was when
yeah.
Matt first fought Jake?
Yep.
Right? So yeah, I remember it was like 2015, 2016. Troy puts us to fight each other, right? My guy versus your guy, Matt. And you know, the fight happens. And I remember the decision being a split decision, but
yeah.
I remember you just manhandled my guy. You just manhandled him. And I remember after the fight, you know, we were both sportsmen-like. You know, I congratulated you guys, and I remember saying to you, man, you guys definitely won by unanimous decision. And it was kind of funny because that started the friendship.
Yeah.
You were just kind of, I remember you telling me, you were like, that dude's super cool.
Yeah,
like,
you know
wow,
what I mean?
who does that?
Yeah, it was
right?
a big difference from the other guy trying to contest the thing, because there was like 9 months apart in the birthday. So it was a big difference. I was like, man, this guy's cool, man, you know?
Yeah.
I was expecting, you know, like the Muay Thai scene can be kind of cliquey, you know what I mean? And I was expecting, like, you know, I was, again, like training Matt, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're an independent gym. Like me and Matt, like, you know, where we got to with him, you know, it was just him and me, you know, and then I'd have to go to places to have him spar and stuff. So I was just like, it was always kind of fighting against the hometown guy. And I was like, this guy's cool as hell, man, you know?
Yeah. And then lo and behold, we ended up becoming good friends after that. I think not too long, like, we started working together.
Yeah.
You were looking for a new trainer.
And what happened after that, it was they had a rematch for a title. Matt and Jake.
Oh,
they had a rematch.
Is that when all this happened?
Well, we became tight then, and we were like Facebook friends and all that stuff. Oh yeah, and then we would, like, you know, buds. And then I remember they asked Troy's like, hey, we want them to fight again, and I hit you up like, hey, they want them to fight. I was like, you cool with that? And he's like, yeah, man, it'll be good for the kids. And I was like, yeah, let's do it, you know. And then it was so funny at the fight, you know, you and me were this like ringside, we were just talking about a bunch of stuff, and like all the people were like, is this normal? You know, we were like cracking jokes like, oh, I'll see you after, all right? Yeah, you bet, you know?
Yeah.
And then they had another good fight. It was good. And then after that, I was going through the same thing where, like, had a trainer, but, like, you know, it was always kind of like this, you know, and, you know, I've worked with a lot of really good guys and whatnot, but I hit you. I'm like, hey man, can I like want to do a pad session? You're like, yeah, sure. So we were going to help me out with this pad session once a week. And then I was like, hey dude, like, unfortunately, like, kind of need a coach right now. Can you step up? And you're like, yeah, man, let's do it. I'll help you out, you know? So it was awesome, dude, you know, like, helped me out. And then, you know, we became brothers, you know, it was awesome.
Absolutely. It was. And then it was kind of cool because within a year we won 2 titles together.
Yep,
we won a kickboxing title.
Kickboxing North American title.
And then
WBC national.
the WBC Muay Thai champion belt.
Yeah, it was awesome, you know, and like we fought, you know, 2 good guys too. It was badass, you know.
Absolutely. And it was cool because we really only just had to part ways just because, you know, with my vision of what I was trying to do with MTK, I just wanted a different life for myself.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
dude. And like, you know,
we parted ways like professionally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was good, man, because like seeing where you've come from when we were there, you know, like the gym was like, you know, not in a great place. And then seeing where it is now, dude, you got like two locations.
Two locations,
and you're packed. So I was like, it was awesome. You know what I mean? Like super happy for you. And like, it was, you know, people were like, oh, did you guys have like burnt bridges? I was like, no, man, you know.
You know what's funny? Because people always think that, right? And it's like, no, me and Charles, we had just a peaceful breakup. It was just, he understood what I was trying to do, and I couldn't give you that time that you deserved, you know?
And that the time that you were willing to give before was so much more than I've gotten too, you know what I mean? So I was just like, dude, it was, you know, I was always grateful, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, I've been very blessed down here too, like, you know, worked with you, and then I got to, Rob was my coach's favorite fighter. He was my coach for a long time, and he was kind of a gypsy. He was always in and out, but whenever I got to train with him, he really gave me that old school common style, you know what I mean? And that really helped out a lot too, you know? So I always like give some tribute to him with like developing me, giving me that like that style as well. But like we had a great time, and it was good, man. You know, we had a good time. A lot of silly videos.
Yes. Some maybe would have to be edited, right?
Yeah, they're archived for sure. That was good. And then, you know, what else? You know, went to Thailand, fought there quite a few times, won some titles over there, and now I'm training with Daniel Gutierrez at Defiant, and he's like same kind of vibe as you. This is a good man, good guy. And I also work with one of my former sparring partners, Jason Borba, out of Unbreakable. So both those guys, like you know, as you know, holding for me can kind of be it can be
it's a workout.
Yeah, it's a workout.
It's a workout.
It's damaging, I think, to some people. Like, you know, I've broken two people. I've broken one person's arm by holding, you know what I mean, another person's arm in a fight, and you know, sometimes it's like I appreciate everybody that holds for me, you know, because
I remember too. It was that night where Jake and Matt fought each other, and I remember you were like, "Hey, you were asking me what's the biggest guy you've held for?" And I was like, "Oh, I've held for Czech Congo, who's like 240." You're like, "Cool."
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
like, "Okay, he's got me then."
Yeah.
I remember like, there was this. Because I get it. Like finding a good paddle holder that can hold for you.
It's hard.
Because if you guys don't know, Charles is a powerhouse. You know, he's got a lot of power, and it's true. A lot of people can't really like hold for you.
Yeah.
And then you're fast too. You're explosive for your size.
Thank you.
Charles, for people that don't know you yet, or maybe are just stumbling upon this, what's your weight class that you fight at?
A lot of my career, I was fighting at 190. In my last like probably 10 or so fights, 12 fights, I fought at 200.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You know, I was cutting a lot of weight to make 190, and just wouldn't, like, you know, I think people cut too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think they drain themselves, deplete themselves. I don't think it's good for the brain to cut that much. And I'm a pretty lean guy, you know?
Yeah.
I don't really, especially, you know, when I hit 30, I went the opposite. I like lost all my fat, you know? So trying to suck all that water out was just kind of silly, you know?
Yeah.
And I felt like crap last, you know, I don't know, 14 and some. Most of my fights are wins, you know, and by knockout too.
Absolutely.
You know? So,
what would you say your total fight record is? Would you have an idea of like what
professional? It's 35-7, and then my amateur record was 17-4.
Wow.
So yeah,
so many fights.
Yeah, for North American, yeah.
And then all the titles. Let's revisit those titles again. So we have, how many titles are we talking here? Four world titles.
4 world titles, and then I had. The title that's like the lowest one, that there was a promotional title, but other than that, there's like CMTA Canadian National Champion, NAMTF North American Champion, ACB North American Kickboxing Champion, 2-time IKKC International Champion, and WBC Champion, Thailand Suet Stadium Champion, and then the world titles. You know? Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man. And then, do you have plans to maybe step in the ring again?
I am not retired. Like, life has been going pretty good. Like, I rodeo, as you know. So rodeo's been going really, really great. I'm really busy. I'm busy all the time with that. And I also cowboy professionally. I work on ranches still, and I'm out. Like this summer, I was in Wyoming for like 3 months and working out there. And then I was rodeoing like 3 to 4 nights out of the week.
Wow.
So that's great, but that keeps you in tremendous shape. You know?
I can only imagine.
Yeah, like it makes you a lot harder, honestly. Like, you know, after like you know, I don't know, my mindset too is like, shit, if I'm gonna get on this, you know, every time I get on a bronc, you're putting your life in that bronc ring, you know. But every time I get on a bronc, I'm just like, fight ain't shit. You know what I mean?
Right? Getting kicked ain't that bad.
Yeah, it ain't that. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I think a lot of people build it up to more than it is. And it is, it's scary, especially when you're a champion. And then like also when you're like the not local guy, like, maybe I'm in my head, but like maybe you have to do a little extra sometimes to win. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that can be pressure, but like, man, people win and lose in the sport. You know what I mean?
All the time.
And like, I've only got, as a professional, only got 7 losses, but
that's awesome.
It's good. You know what I mean? But I'm not done. I do feel like, you were telling me earlier, it's like, man, I don't think you used to me look this good, Yeah. And I feel at my time right now, I feel like, man, I'm hitting more explosive than ever. Mm-hmm. If something comes up that it's exciting to me and I have the time, you bet. You know what I mean? But it's not like I'm not looking to, every year I was like, it was a disappointing thing. I'll be like, I want to fight 5 to 8 times this year, It's so hard to get a fight for me sometimes, Yeah. But I want to, this is not my main focus, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Okay. Like last year, I booked a good amount of acting work. I got to do a film with Michael Keaton. Al Pacino was in the movie. James Marsden. That was awesome. It's called Knox Goes Away, and I shot a Western.
Is that out yet, that movie?
No, it's not out yet.
Not yet.
Yeah,
okay.
So it's going to come out this year. And then, it's recently, like I filmed 3 commercials this year, even with the strike going on, Nice. It just ended. Shot another one last week, and that's going good. Did a pretty funny music video with Diplo. It's just fun. Yeah, it was fun,
That's super cool.
But those things are like, that's happening good. And I've done a lot of commercial work, and I did some movies in the past too. Mm-hmm. But when I was pro and this like all in, I'd be like, oh yeah, like, I'm going 50-50, but I really wasn't going 50-50. It was all fighting, and like I'd half-ass my auditions,
Okay.
Because, you can't mess around with fighting. So if I get a fight, it's where I know it's a slow time for acting, and I don't have a lot of rodeos coming up, and I can really just be a zombie for fighting. You know what I mean?
I love it.
And I'm always in shape, so I don't need like this huge camp. I need like 5-6 weeks tops.
Yeah, nice.
And I'll do it because I'm not going to half-ass it. But I'm definitely not done. I think I have a lot more fights in me, but we'll see. You know what I mean? It's if something comes up that's intriguing and it gets me excited, you bet. But I'm not going to just go and fight to fight, you know what I mean? Like I've got altogether 63 fights. So
yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, for North American, yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
That was a pretty like life-changing scare too, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my mom and I were going home to feed horses, It was early in the morning.
Oh, how old were you at this time?
It was a week before I turned 17.
Wow.
And I knocked out a grown man the prior week in Vancouver. So I was just on that big high.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of responsibility. We had to go home, like where I grew up, we'd had to go home by like sled and snowmobile. And the average year was 5 to 7 feet of snow. So we'd have to go home, snowmobile up and all that stuff. So it was a 3-hour drive, like I said. And we were going up there, we hit black ice. Then I was sleeping, and I woke up, and my mom was like, shit. And then like we saw this Jeep Cherokee coming at us, and my mom did a maneuver, car went like this, and it flipped. And I wasn't wearing my seatbelt.
Dang.
And I just remember like making contact with the window, with my passenger window, and I flung out of the window. And I went flying way over this bank, and my mom was still in the car, and the car was just spinning. And I woke up on the other side of this tree, and this tree kind of stopped the car from crushing me, right? So I woke up, and I was having flashbacks of having to feed horses, having flashbacks of like me knocking a guy out. And then I'm kind of like, oh man, I think we're in a car accident, Mom. And I'm seeing blood everywhere, And then I was like, I think we're in a car accident. And she's just kind of moaning there. And I was like, I'm going to get you out. So I got up, and my femur, I broke my femur was over here. And my bones hit each other, and I was like,
Oh, man.
And she's like, what's wrong? And I thought I broke my hips. And I was like, I think I broke my hips. So then she was like, don't move. And I like the gasoline was everywhere, Wow. So car was starting to spark a bit. And I was like, I tried to get up again. And I couldn't. I was like, dude, I can't get up. So we both were like, hey, I love you and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
and these 2 farmers came over, got me up, picked me up a bad leg first. So I'm like waking up there, and I was like, Took me over and sat me down and got my mom out. And it was literally like within 20 seconds they got her out. The car was engulfed in flames,
Wow.
So I remember like we were in like they took us to a clinic, and then they took us to get the operations done. So I have like a rod in my leg, right? They put a steel rod in my leg. And I remember beforehand, I was just like, I was all doped up on like morphine. Yeah. And we were in the surgery room, and I was like, I need more of that medicine. I need more opium. And mom was just like, he's seen too many Westerns. I'm sorry, you know? And my mom, her wrist was shattered, her arm was shattered. They put 7 plates. It was bad, you know? So I was in there. I remember that night, like I called my coach and I was just like a mess. I was like all over the place. And I was like, dude, I had a car accident. That night, my coach, all my teammates, they came, they're all by my bed.
Oh man, that's awesome.
They came by me. Like we had a good community and they were supportive. And then I was on crutches. Like wasn't able to really walk until like months later, but I was on crutches and I was, when the trail annual fights came around, I was on crutches. I went out there. I got a bunch of sponsors. I got like $3,000 worth of sponsors from my coach. And then I was holding pads for people. I'd go into a corner and put myself up because I was a really good pad holder. And they'd have to stay in one spot and I'd hold pads to them.
Okay.
But it gave me like a purpose because that was like a dark time for me, you know?
Okay.
And I was like, that was supposed to be my year of like getting titles, you know?
Yeah.
And then that year was really rough because my parents were like, we can't live on the mountain anymore, you know? And that kind of put me into a dark place because that was the first time I happened to live in a town.
Yeah.
And I was like this wild kid from the mountains that never been around people, and I was going crazy. I was like, I can't do this. So I got the blessing of my dad. I was like, I'm going to go work for a hunting and guiding outfit up by Alaska on the Canadian side, Northwest Territories. And I finished that job, and then I got in touch with I was a certified farrier when I was 15, and then I got word I got a cowboy job, and I was like, Dad, can I have permission? I want to move out, you know? My dad's like, yeah, you're good, don't, you know? So then I put fighting on hold for quite a while, you know?
Okay.
I was still like training here and there, but I was just cowboying for years, you know?
How long would you say that duration was? Like you took a break from fighting. How long did it take for you to get that itch again where you're like, all right, I got a fight set up?
I always had the itch.
Okay.
I mean, always had the itch, but I was always scared like, oh man, is my leg the same, you know?
Okay.
And it was 6 years. It was 6 years, yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, I came back and I kicked, and I was like, oh, my kick's never going to be the same because everybody, when I was a kid, I was knocking all these guys out with head kicks. They all my like people would call me Little Crow Cop, you know?
Oh shoot!
And I went in the gym and I smacked that bag, and I was just like, you know, I started sparring, and I was just like, I switched stances, like you can kick my leg, you know? And they kicked me. I was like, dude, I feel nothing. Like it's stronger than ever, you know what I mean?
That's cool.
And then I was like, I'm gonna have one more fight, and then one more fight turned into a bunch, and it's like, you know, there was never an issue with my leg, you know? I was always concerned, but like when I was in the hospital, man, like, you know, I had, and I'm almost kicking because I had 3 blood clots in my lungs. They had to fly me down to another hospital, had to get on like a bunch of stuff. Like they said they almost had to open up my leg to stop like the bleeding and stuff, you know, but I had blood clots in my lungs. And I can't remember what it was exactly about opening the leg. It was 2 things. They were going to put me on this medicine to get the blood clots stopped, but I was like coughing up these clots of blood like for quite a while, you know? But talking about community, I had to if you get a good community in a gym, you know, it's pretty special, you know?
That's awesome. Yeah. Shout out to Pride Gym. Are they still around, buddy?
Still around, yeah. They got one guy right now, Keenan, I can't remember can't pronounce his Keenan but he's on a tear. He is pretty darn close, I think, to getting into the UFC right now.
That's awesome.
And from coming from a tiny little town like that, you know, like Glenn produced a lot of really good fighters that never got like the recognition that they should have gotten. Like they never, like, you know, we had one guy, Brent Russell, and he was a 6-time Canadian champ, but you know, he had such a right hand. He fought 165, but if he would have fought in the shows down here, man, it would have been pretty fun to watch, you know? But you know, he was a great coach. He's had another guy was made it to the UFC, fought in there like 5 or 6 times.
Nice.
You know, it's pretty cool, you know? But
that's cool.
Yeah, special gym.
Nice. Shout out to the good gyms out there,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard stories about the bad ones too, so there's always, you appreciate hearing the good ones, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Buddy, real quick, for anyone that is listening and is kind of like maybe getting beat up at the gym right now and they kind of struggle like, man, I don't know if this is for me, but going back to your story, like what kind of advice would you give to people that are starting a gym, they really want it, but they're just getting beat up every day? Like what could you say to them to help maybe inspire someone?
I would say one, like look at the scenario. If it's really bad where if you've been knocked out in training, no one said anything, you know what I mean? Like that's a shitty coach. You know what I mean? Like you need to make sure you have a coach that's watching over you and protecting you, which Glenn was a good coach. I'm not like, he was a great coach. I'm very happy where I came from, you know? Wasn't like that. That's what I'm saying. But there's a lot of gyms where I've heard people get knocked out. I'm like, you don't need to be hurting people like that, you know?
That's right.
We're not, you know, you're as a training partner too, and I've gotten older too. I'm very selective who I spar with. I only spar when I'm in training camps, you know what I mean? Because I've been doing this for 27 years now. Yeah. And when I spar, I want to spar with quality guys. There's always going to be some guys or even amateurs that are going to try to take your head off. And then I'm going to look like the asshole if I go knock somebody out now, you know? So if someone's going to go stupid hard like that, I'm not going to spar with you. I'm just like, I was sparring partners with Rich Franklin for a long time. He was one of the best training partners I've had.
Nice.
And we'd have awesome rounds together. Awesome. I've trained with sparred with Jerome LeBanner, you know, like good rounds. He could Jerome could like blow me through this wall, you know what I mean? Yeah. But he was like, he'd go firm with me, but he would never try to hurt me, you know?
That's awesome.
And I had like some other really good Russian guys I trained with, but you don't want to be taking unnecessary punishment. Now, you're going to go through hard times where you're learning how to get hit. And, you know, that's just part of it. And if you have a good coach where they're looking after you, you just got to learn how to defend yourself. You know, you got to listen to your coach. You got to be coachable. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's part of it. You know, like, you know, if you were from Pride Gym or like you trained with the Dutch or anything like that, or I'm sure the Thais too, I train with Thais, like you have to have a certain amount of like hardness to, you know?
Absolutely.
Like you can't be, you know, this is not a soft man sport, you know? It's just like rodeo, you know, you can't be a softie, you know?
Exactly.
So you got to kind of like, you know, figure it out in there, and, you know, everyone's going to, once you get over the bad habits, because when you first get hit, you're going to be like this, you know, start to get grounded, then, you know, you're not going to be good for a few fights, you know? Yeah. Or maybe you're going to pick up really fast, but, you know, if you're super gifted too, you got to put that work in, you know, because hard work beats, you know,
talent any day. Yeah, absolutely.
But stick with it. Find a good team. This guy's a great coach if you're out here, you know.
Thank you, buddy.
And like, love you.
Love you too, man.
Yeah,
love you too.
You know, but like, find a good coach. Find someone who's going to look out for you and like listen. Be coachable. You know, I think that's so many people are not coachable. You know.
Absolutely.
You know, like Matt, that kid, like, I never wanted to train a fighter. You know, I don't think I'll ever train a fighter. I'll help out here and there in the gym because like it takes a lot of time. But Matt's been #1 in the world for like, I think over 3 years now, you know?
We were just talking, like I would actually love to have Matt on the show because I thought it would be like a cool connectional piece. And I've actually assisted you in the corner with Matt too. We've just been a big family together. And we just seeing him accomplish those titles and title defenses, it's been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, kid's been #1 in the world for years. His last fight was supposed to be a world title fight, which you know he was gutted about. It was for another U.S. title, and he really was pretty darn bummed about that. And he had to find motivation to kind of train for that fight. But you know, went in there, fought a very, very good and popular gym. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and
he did.
Dominated. You know?
Yes, he did.
Dominated that fight.
All 5 rounds.
All 5 rounds, and like I don't think people thought it was going to happen, but I had no doubt. You know, I was like,
same here. Yeah. I had no doubt in my mind.
I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? We go on the front foot, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, but it was good, but I you know, that kid is super, like, that kid he had, I think some people that get into this too, he had like fighter heart, you know what I mean? He had a lot of heart, you know?
Yeah. And he's so humble, which I love about Matt.
Very humble.
So humble.
Very smart kid too.
Yeah.
Very incredibly smart. Like, graduated summa cum laude from UCLA. Wow. Freaking, you know, #1 in the world. Oh my gosh. Smart kid, speaks like 3 languages. Wow. You know, not like me. Yeah, I can barely speak English. So yeah, but you know, he's super talented. I'm proud of him. But I like, unless you have like, you know, when I was in the gym, I kind of got a hold of him when I was like, when he was 16, and I just told him to do a few things in the bag, and I was like, held past him a little bit. I'm like, all right, cool. And then like, you know, working here and there, and I was like, you want to fight? And he's like, yeah. You know? And then like I made him go out of state. We went to Seattle, and he fought like a guy that was like 21. He was like 17 and bare shin, no headgear for his first fight. And I was like, all right, you did the proper way. And, you know, he's solid, you know, but you got to want it. You know what I mean? I think you got to want it. That's a long talk about that.
No, it's okay.
You got to want it, I think, you know?
I love that.
Yeah.
Buddy, where can they find you on Instagram? What's your Instagram handle?
Charles Valhalla Bisset.
You guys heard that. Follow my guy. Awesome friend of mine. We've known each other for years now. But buddy, thank you so much for hanging out with me. And buddy, I'm loving the mustache, by the way. I just got to compliment that.
I appreciate that.
Hey. But buddy, thank you for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it.
You bet.
But guys, that concludes this episode of Muay Thai Save Me. As you guys know, if you're just tuning in, we just like to bring on guests that share how Muay Thai impacted them in some great way. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. All right, but stay tuned for next week's video.
Damn right.